Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. All right, we are here with Supriya Dwivedi. She is a contributing columnist with the National Observer, and we're going to look back at the session that was, and I guess 1 year-ish of Mark Carney in office. So let's start. I'm just trying to think where to start here. I think for me, as someone who's there fairly often, the defining feature from what I saw was it's this whole thing about the Achilles heel of liberals is arrogance, and as soon as they got crossed over the majority threshold, like that switch got flipped. And I'm wondering if this is something you kind of noticed from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, well, first and foremost, I think your, diagnosis of the liberal Achilles heel issue being arrogance is spot on. I think that's almost certainly always the case, at least in my adult lifetime. And so I would agree with that. I would say the only caveat I would perhaps lay out is, from my perspective, and you with a front row seat in the gallery may have a different perspective, but it seemed as though the Carney Liberals were effectively governing as though they did have a majority, even when they had a very strong minority. But certainly when it comes to their rhetoric around certain pieces of legislation being, pushed through without, in my view, proper consultation and then proper time for feedback and amendments, certainly fits the bill of the arrogant thing.
Yeah, well, that was kind of it exactly. I mean, my biggest bugaboo, of course, is the Lawful Access Bill C-22, and you had Gary Anandasangari saying things like, "Oh, we just haven't communicated this properly." It's like, no, there are legitimate problems with this bill. It is not a you communication problem. It is there are legitimate issues, and you are completely ignoring that.
Yeah, and look, I think on the lawful access front, I mean, the government, irrespective of whether it's been a liberal government or a conservative government, I mean, they've tried attempts at this, right, in the past, and it hasn't always gone super successfully. What I found most surprising, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago, on the CBC's Power and Politics, is that the rhetoric, particularly around lawful access coming from this liberal government, is almost verbatim-ish to what the Harper government was saying back when Vic Taves would have been throwing out that line of "you're either with us or with the child pornographers," right? The fact 100%. And the fact that they're now deeming anybody who disagrees with aspects of this piece of legislation as either being tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, as Minister McKinnon said recently.
Yeah, that one got under my skin.
Yeah, or, as Minister Anandasangari has said, just being a comms issue. But, the one thing that I want, your viewers to really hone in on is the fact that from the government's perspective, what they've been saying is that they need lawful access, of course, because they have to be in line with our peer countries, with our allies.
Yeah, with our Five Eyes allies. Yeah, we're the only Five Eyes country that doesn't have lawful access.
So we need to do
a lot
something.
of them don't go anywhere near what they want in this particular bill either.
That's exactly it. And so if you look at the U.S., for example, the only comparable requirement under U.S. federal law would be a 90-day retention period for metadata, right? And then if you look to European courts, I mean, they've consistently found that metadata that links your, online activity to your identity is considered private. Yeah. And then, of course, there's our own Supreme Court, right?
Two separate instances where lawful access has been deemed unconstitutional.
Exactly. And most recently, it was 2024, I believe.
Yeah, Beekowitz.
Exactly, where they found that Section 8 of the Charter, which protects Canadians against search and seizure, or unlawful search and seizure, I should say, extends to IP addresses. So, loop all of those facts in with the fact that there is no charter statement when it comes to metadata retention, magically, about this bill. And
mysteriously.
And it becomes very hard to believe the government that this is, charter compliant and will survive a judicial review. So I don't think the ad hominem insults coming from the government is super helpful. And I think it just provides, folks that were perhaps maybe not necessarily on the fence, but that, always consider liberals as like being one step away from being too arrogant to want to vote for again. Like they're just reminding those peoples of the Achilles heel of that liberal brand.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to somebody over the weekend, and they're like, it's like the Martin years again. I'm like, oh, okay.
Is that good? Yeah.
Yeah, and I get, the other thing that has kind of come out of both this lawful access, but also C14 and C16, is that they're suddenly patting themselves in the back and saying, we're the real party of tough on crime now. The conservatives used to be, but now it's us. And that, again, is making me kind of blow my mind, because it's like doing the dumbest things possible. And I keep going back to the fact that they essentially played themselves on C14, because by tinkering with the criminal code around the law of bail unnecessarily, when the problem is and always has been provincial under-resourcing of courts, then they have opened themselves up to the fact that the next time someone commits a crime on bail, that it's on them.
So I don't disagree with that, and I think you're spot on with respect to the diagnosis of the problem. And I mean, often when we were having these conversations, when I was still in government, when Trudeau was there, that's exactly kind of the conclusion that I believe officials would have come to. The one thing I will push back, though, and I don't really know how to solve for this, is that the narrative is out there that it's everything ends up being the fault of the federal government, essentially. Yeah. And we don't have provinces, particularly in Ontario, I would say, that are willing to accept their jurisdictional responsibility for a lot of things. So I can certainly understand from like a capital P political, like politicking perspective, why the Liberals would have gone that way. But I agree with you. Like, I also don't think it's, going to be a long-term sort of fix for them. So even if people aren't, let's say polling wise, and people end up giving them a pass on this, I don't think that lasts for very long. And I don't think that they want to be tying themselves to dumb legislative solutions simply because they can box out the Conservatives for this short period of time right now,
Yeah, well, it just seems like such an incredibly short-term strategy that's going to cause more problems in the long term.
Yay.
But what do I know? Online harms. I know this was partially your baby back when you were in the center of things. The fact that they have taken out the hate crime stuff, I understand, was mostly in response to a lot of the criticism, but they've also done dumb things like fold in the age verification bill that has successfully been resisted up until this point. That worries me a whole lot.
It should worry you, and it should worry every single Canadian that cares about going online regularly, because whenever we talk about age verification, it's always under the umbrella of it being for children. But of course, in order to find out who's a child, you got to card everybody, right? And so people don't necessarily think of it as age verification or age, assurance, estimation, whatever the case may be for adults. And, to your point, the hate crime stuff, I think, was rightfully split from this bill. And in the previous bill's defense, I will say that towards the end, when Minister Varani was in charge of the bill as Justice Minister, he did end up splitting the bill. It just ended up happening that, once Trudeau resigned, everything died on the order paper because Parliament was prorogued, including online harms. So I think that was the right move to do. I think the more you can focus online harms on like the pure accountability aspect for the platforms, and the thinner you can make it, I guess, the better it is. And I think they've done that quite well. Okay. The problem, to your point, is the age verification stuff. And there's just so much that is left to regulations and
Yeah.
this whole notion of like, well, don't worry, just trust us. Like, to your point about age verification, like there's no language in this bill about what tech or what process to use, and the bill is also silent on whether it's age verification at like the platform level or at the app store level. And like,
Yeah.
so there's all sorts of details that we still need that we don't have, and yet we're forging ahead with this. And then the other thing I will just point out, because now I've been ranting for a long time, is that if you look at it from the context of our trade relationship, right, with the U.S., I mean, I am hopeful that the Carney government is actually going to, hold firm on this, but they haven't held firm on quite literally anything else when it comes to digital policy. With respect to the Trump administration, like we got rid of the digital services tax without getting anything in return.
Yeah.
We're backing down on C11, Online Streaming Act. Online News Act is right now the future of it is somewhat questionable. So for this, I really question if they are in fact going to actually put up a fight and stand firm. But let's see. This is the last thing I will say. Is that we have evidence from a bunch of other jurisdictions, including very recently from Australia, and they're telling us that the data that these types of bans straight up do not work. The Safety Commissioner's first report found that it was about 70% of kids who had access before the ban still retained access after the ban. So I don't really know what we're doing here.
Okay. Sorry, train of thought.
I went on a really long rant. So
no, you're correct on the platform stuff. Yeah, the back to the age verification stuff. Yeah, this is something that Michael Geist says people considered a nerd harder problem. It's like we're not going to tell you what the technology is. We're just going to expect you to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's problematic in legislation because there's some problems that you can't just nerd your way out of, and this is one of them considering the current level of technology. Whether it's people keep saying, oh, you don't need your privacy violations, you can go to Canada Post and get a token from them after you show your ID, but how long is that supposed to last for? How is that supposed to be foolproof if your kid can get can take the token from you and get online? And
how do we expect Canada Post to keep that information safe as well from us? I don't know. To your point, like there are all these questions, and I don't think they're answering them well. I think they're doing this, just trust us, which I don't think is a really compelling comm strategy. And the other thing I will say, and I said this to a bunch of current conservative MPs last week that I saw at an event for a friend's thing, and I was like, guys, all of the stuff that you made up about our online arms bill is actually true in this online arms bill. So all of the stuff that you were accusing us of doing, like weird digital mandatory IDs and age verification checks, that is actually likely going to happen in this bill. And you guys, cried wolf the first time. So like, good luck in trying to get people to care about, the criticisms that you guys have of this bill. Yeah. And they were all just like, yeah, fuck, you're right. You can believe me for that. Yeah, no, but I just thought it was funny. I'm like, the irony is real delicious here.
No, absolutely. The one other point to make about online harms is so much of it is being left to regulation, and I think, quoting Geist again, I think he tallied them up, and there's like 50 different decision points that are all being kicked off into the future around this legislation, whether for either cabinet decision or regulatory, or the regulator that has yet to be created to do. So I think it's a lot that they are putting down the road, and saying, yeah, just trust us, we'll do it fine. Just give us the power.
Yeah, I agree with all that, but as of right now, Canadians still do seem to be trusting, right? So I like, as long as polling numbers are the way they are, I don't really fully expect a pivot from the federal government on any of this.
No, for sure. So, other thing that's, I guess, notable about this particular session was we actually had bills passed beyond just like one or two outside of the money bills, because they can now invoke time allocation to
Yeah.
break some of the log jams that had been constant since 2019. The unrelenting state of procedural warfare that nobody believes me was actually happening. I guess just any thoughts on the fact that this particular sea change happened as part of the crossing that majority line?
Yeah, I mean, look, on the one hand, you can't fault a government for wanting to pass legislation, right? Especially,
Yeah.
like, to your point, the last session, a big criticism of the government was that they didn't pass enough legislation, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's generally fine to want to pursue, of course, your own legislative agenda. And to your point about time allocation, that to me is like they're using the parliamentary process to their advantage. So it's a bit of a don't hate the playa, hate the game kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But that said, like, I think there are, and I'm going to go back to lawful access here, Bill
Yeah.
C-22, but, if you're a normal democratic government that's confident and you respect the opposition and the private sector and, civil liberty groups and civil society that are raising pretty serious concerns of the bill, you shouldn't want to just ram it through just
Yeah.
for the sake of ramming it through, right? Because, like, aside from the fact that it is, again, entirely possible we're going to see a pretty massive tech pullout from the country with respect to, like, VPNs and, other businesses that don't feel
Yeah,
like
certain messaging or private messaging services.
yeah. So, like, I mean, like, okay, let's see, but I think, you should really, you should want to hear concerns. I think it's good to hear concerns,
Yeah.
and I think it's good to be collaborative, even if you do have a majority and you don't necessarily need to be collaborative. You should want to be because it produces better outcomes. And I don't understand why there was a rush for C-22 in the way that they made it.
No, and particularly because there was no chance the Senate was going to be able to look at it before the summer. So again, that
Yeah, it's all very weird. But to just go back to your first point, I think it's like, if they keep doing this and they keep, looking as though they're not taking Parliament seriously, or that they're, just kind of using the sheer numbers to muscle their way through the legislative agenda. Like, like, again, I think this is a very inside baseball-y type of problem for now, but
Yeah.
the more these stories start to come out, it starts to turn into less of an Ottawa bubble story and more of like a, around the water cooler coffee shop type story of folks talking about it quite regularly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were days where I was suddenly like having flashbacks to Peter Van Loan as House Leader. And he would time allocate absolutely everything, and every single time Peter Julian would stand up and say, "Here we go again."
Yeah.
And I've just had these flashbacks over the last 2 weeks. Anyway, that's my own particular trauma.
Your PTSD coming back to you, the Peter Van Loan days, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and I'm going to extend a little bit to the Senate as well. I've got a piece that should be online by now about how they muscled through a bunch of stuff at the very end on programming motions that gave like senators a day to look at certain bills, and they were all big,
Meaty, chunky bills.
bills, and it's like, what was the point of doing that? They could have sat 2 extra weeks in the summer and done things the normal way, but no, they just insisted on doing it this way, and that's Carney's choice of government leader who's made these decisions. So yeah.
I mean, ultimately, everything kind of comes from the center, right? Like the direction is set, and like the vibes, I guess, for lack of a better term, are kind of like set right at the top, and I think you're seeing that quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the other thing is, I mean, we are living through more in Ottawa, I think, than elsewhere, but through the whole round of cuts and so on within the public service. And I guess the kind of dumb way that things are being done with, as I term it, cutting like a CEO, just saying, reduce your head count. Don't tell us how you're going to do it. Don't tell us what kind of capabilities you're going to be losing. Just cut head count. And I just wondering, I guess, how much of this are you seeing kind of filtered from outside the perspective from where you are?
I think most of the concern that I've heard from parents at pickup and drop off or like at the park or whatever is with respect to impact on CRA and because I just, again, anecdotally, it's not like a statistically relevant sample, but I know at least a few people that have had frustrations with asking that CRA bot a couple of basic tax questions and getting wrong answers. And so I think now there's early consternation with respect to how some of the government's all-in on AI strategy from an economic standpoint is going to end up hitting, the reality wall of we can't necessarily do that and expect the same level of services for people. And I'm not saying there are everything is super 100% running at max efficiency and that there aren't, perhaps things that can be done here and there, of course, right?
100%.
But I think when you're, talking about service delivery, you're talking about people needing to have, proper questions answered. I don't know if relying on, a chat bot is the way to go about that.
Kind of as the segue, the all-in on AI. I have particular feelings about this. Where are you sitting on how this is being handled?
Yeah, so look, I think it's very clear they're coming at this from a economic growth at all costs kind of strategy, and I don't think that's that's fine. Okay, sure. They have a lot of really good stuff in there, like the world leading public supercomputer by 2031, right? Trying to increase business adoption, I think by 60% by 2034. Investing in the reskilling or upskilling, all of that's good. I sure, fine. But for me, the reason why their AI strategy doc gets I wouldn't even grade it. I would give it an incomplete because it's incomplete. It doesn't address the actual governance issues or the ethics and the safety issues that are inherent to actually getting AI adoption up and running. And so I don't really know what they're doing here. A really good example, if you look at the way that the strategy talks about how we're going to protect our democratic institutions. I mean, there's one sentence in the entire 50-page document, and it's just we're going to pledge to protect elections and democratic institutions from AI misinformation. And it's okay, good.
Great.
How? Yeah, we don't know. It doesn't say. There's no obligation on the platforms about, how they go about circulating, deep fakes or content. It doesn't name any sort of enforceable body or rules. There's vague sort of mention of watermarking when it's an AI, deep fake or whatever. But that puts the burden on the public to be able to catch, AI mis and disinfo instead of the system that's actually the one that's pumping it out. So it's very bizarre to me. And when you're talking about the governance of AI, there's quite literally nothing in there about how to govern AI democratically, right?
Yeah.
What's the recourse? I was just talking about CRA, right? What's the recourse if there's a decision that's made by a chatbot or some automated decision that's wrong for a Canadian? What is the recourse for that citizen? What do they do? And if we're talking about systems that provide you access or not to things like credit, housing, tax benefits, then you need to know how we're going to go about improving trust in these systems and how we're going to govern it. And yet silence. So
yeah, well, and hand in hand with that, I mean, there's things like the automation that they're doing with certain immigration files and stuff like that. And they keep saying things like, "Oh, don't worry, every decision is made by a human." I'm like, really? Do we think that every human in the department is actually going to go through all of this, or are they going to say, "Well, the AI, said it's okay, so we're gonna trust it"? That for me is one of these things that I'm like, increasing the reliance on this tool and insist, saying that your employees are still going to make the decisions. I'm not necessarily going to trust that.
Well, yeah, and I would also just point out that, in the wake of the absolute tragedy that happened in Tumbler Ridge, I mean, there were humans involved in that decision-making process.
Yeah.
A human in the loop doesn't mean a fail-safe necessarily. And it often functions as like a bit of a PR exercise for the companies to say, well, we have a human in the loop. But ultimately you need enforceable guidelines and proper standards, and like that's what was missing, right? It's like an actual governance checklist of what the decision tree is and what the marker is of like, or delineation of when something crosses over into needing to alert law enforcement. And the consistent application of that standard. So the whole thing I just find very frustrating as somebody who used to work in this space.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we should probably start doing more short round here. I'm just trying to think. Anything that kind of grabbed you in terms of what you're seeing? We've got 6 by-elections coming up this fall. Anything in there that you're kind of going to be looking for?
I'm curious as to how the NDP will do in general, just because, newer leader in Avi Lewis, he himself doesn't have a seat.
Seemingly refusing any of the options before him.
Yeah, which I think is interesting. I know there's a lot of people that think that's probably kind of silly, but I don't know. Like, let's see. At this point, I don't.
I remember when Jagmeet Singh said he wasn't going to get a seat and then became irrelevant within 2 months.
Yes, okay, that's a good example. Okay, that's
just
fair.
Saying.
Yeah. So that is interesting that he's not seeking a seat. We'll see how, to your point, how long that lasts. But I'm just curious as to like if there's, if they end up being competitive, particularly in like a riding like Beaches East York, for example, which should be a pretty good fight for the NDP to put up in that riding. Or like what's the other one with Wilkinson having left?
It's North Vancouver.
North Vancouver.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how the NDP has done there historically, but if you've got a leader from British Columbia, you got to imagine they've got a few resources from like the provincial side of things for folks to be able to knock doors or whatever. So I'll be interested in that riding as well.
Yeah, apparently it was the riding next door to the one he ran in last time, but I've also heard people saying like it's such a solid Liberal riding that it would be suicide to attempt it. So I don't know, but you would almost think you'd have more of a shot there. Montreal better than I do. Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. Do you think the Liberals are going to possibly claim that one?
I do. My only hesitation in claiming like more confidently that they will, I guess, is because Quebec is in the throes of heading towards a provincial election themselves, which is why he would have pieced out.
Well, him and one of the Bloc MPs, they're both running provincially. So
so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of fits into the narrative. But if there is a Quebec seat that they can, kind of swoop in and pick up, I would imagine it's that one. I'm curious as to right now in the NDP current caucus without Boulris there, who ends up being the sort of Quebec voice for them, which is why I think it's easy for the Liberals to kind of swoop in there and snatch that. But then again, I will say the Bloc Québécois, they can surprise you a lot of times. And so let's see what kind of, foot soldiers they put out there, especially in the lead up to the election.
And as it turns out, Boulris was a separatist all along. So, all right. I think we'll leave it there. But thanks so much for taking the time to do this. This was fun and also just, frustrating.
That's how most people describe me. It's okay. Fun and frustrating.
I mean, that's our political life these days. Thanks so much for doing this, and we'll do it again in the near future.
Sounds good, Dale. Thanks.
All right. Cheers. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. It's at journo_Dale on Twitter and journodale no_ on Bluesky. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.